Joining me now is Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger of Illinois. Congressman, thank you so much for being with us. Would you vote to overturn tariffs on Mexico if the president did implement them on Monday?
Yeah, in theory, but I have to caveat that with saying that pretty much everything the Democratic majority has put in front of us usually ends up being political somehow. They add provisions or whatever. But if it's generically, in a generic sense, yes. And I'll tell you why. Two basic reasons. Number one, I represent a lot of farmers. They're taking the chin with the tariffs on China. And I support what the president's doing, and they support what the president's doing on China. They realize this is a war we should have fought 20 years ago, and we have to win to make it fair for America. A lot of flooding in my district right now. And so I think to open up a second front is the wrong answer at this point. And also to link a non-trade issue with a trade hammer, I think isn't the right way to go. But that said, I think this is imperative. We have to recognize there is a crisis on the southern border, and yes. I hope that every Democrat that comes on this network from here until this is fixed is asked, is this a crisis on the southern border? And if they say yes, how are we going to fix it? Because from right now, you can disagree with the Republican solution of fixing some of the asylum laws and building a wall. Disagree all you want. But then you need a solution to come back with, and that solution isn't simply just to blame President Trump.
Well, look, you talk about the crisis, and I think most Democrats say when asked there is a humanitarian crisis. And let me put up some of the numbers about this humanitarian crisis because they are stark and they are new. The U.S. government just put out the numbers that 144,000 migrants have been apprehended and encountered at the southern border. That was in the month of May. That was a 32% increase up over April and the highest monthly total in 13 years. So absolutely numbers that have to be dealt with. You talked about addressing the issue. Democrats say, well, we have proposed adding judges to speed up the process. We have proposed addressing asylum. It needs to be done clearly and perhaps in a apolitical way. Get the wall out of it, get the political problems out of it, and just deal with this singular issue. What would you do?
Well, look, I would put a lot of money to border security because there is a real problem. I would fix the asylum laws. I would make it to where basically if you pass through a safe area, declaring asylum in the United States, you can't pick, according to international law, you can't just pick the country you want to declare asylum in. It's based on that. I would actually work in Central America to stabilize those governments, but that's a long-term focus.
But you know, the president has taken money. The president has taken money away from them.
Right. I agree, and I opposed it when he did it. But it's not just adding more money to that and calling it good. It's fixing the inherent corruption in these regimes, which have basically been there for, almost forever, it seems like. And then it's also a stick to Mexico or a carrot to say you have to do your best to control that border and not just start escorting people through your territory, most of which is controlled by the cartel, simply because it's a problem you don't want to deal with. So it's like everything. I disagree with the idea of using tariffs, but I 100% agree with the president's recognition of this problem. And, we can build as many beds. Democrats, by the way, earlier this year tried to reduce the number of detention beds in the omnibus bill. We can build a number of beds, but we're going to be overwhelmed. We could build 1 million. There's going to be 1.1 people coming over.
Congressman, if I can, you are a colonel in the Air National Guard, a pilot. And first of all, thank you for your service, especially on this day. And I'm wondering if the control room can put up some of the pictures that we've been watching all morning from Normandy. If you could just reflect on what you watched this morning and you saw those veterans, the 65 veterans of D-Day who were there and being thanked on behalf of the nation for their service.
Yeah, it was incredible. I got chills. And I think, I always say the greatest generation is referred to as the World War II generation. I think we're in the next greatest generation. You think about there are dads now of kids or kids of dads that are entering into the same war in the same military that their dads fought in. This is a generation that stood up against terrorism. And so seeing this history of Americans willing to stand up, I don't care if the dude next to me is a Democrat or Republican or Green Party or what. I just care that he's an American and he's got my back. And if you think about just in Normandy, the amount of military members that were involved in the opening stages of Iraq in 2003 was the same number that was in that small square area of a beach. Yeah. It's incredible. 160,000,
it is incredible. And the way the president spoke about them today was deeply moving. He talked about the pride of the nation, the glory of the republic. It is interesting, though, and you have spoken about this in the last 24 hours, which is why I want you to reflect on it. The way the president spoke today is very different than what he said just yesterday about Vietnam service, where he said he was never a fan of that war and said he's making up for his lack of service in that war for military spending now. Would you like to see more of today and less of what we saw yesterday? I mean, would you say that a reason not to do service is because you're not a fan of that war?
No, look, I would love to see more of today than what we saw yesterday. I wasn't personally as offended as some on the Vietnam comments. I don't think he meant to equate that. I think the point is, look, he didn't serve. He admits that. He says that. But he's rebuilding the military, which is actually a really important role because we need that, and it's going to save lives in the future. I wasn't as offended as some people. I think some of it was a bit much. But look, yeah, I wish he'd talk more today than he did yesterday. But at the same time, I think he's doing good policies. And we've all known now for 3 years the president is not like every other president. He's going to tweet things and say things and make us shake our heads sometimes. And sometimes we'll call him out and then just hope that ultimately this country gets it right.
Congressman Adam Kinzinger from Illinois, as we said on this day, thank you for being with us and thanks for your service.
God bless.
Allison.
You bet.